Hey everybody, my opinion on variant covers has been evolving, or I don't want to say evolving. It's been enlightened. It's been, I don't know what it's been, but I'll show you what I mean. And hopefully this will make some sense. Hey look, Ethan Van Sciver has a new campaign up. He always does a lot of promoting for Downcast, which I really appreciate. So yeah, he's got some Cyberfrog books coming out. I really need to get into this and take a closer look at some of the tiers and everything, but it looks like a Wrecked Planet preview and some mini comics. And would you look at this? Downcast has passed $26,000. Thank you very much, everybody. I think there's only like $30. Like once it's at 26,100-ish, then we'll have beaten the total from the last campaign before it hit the end of its 30-day run. And we've got a week left on this campaign, 7 days. So if you haven't backed it yet, it is a great time to jump in. All right, this is all about variant covers. I saw this on Comic Tom 101's channel, and this is one of those videos where he did a crossover with Gem Mint Collectibles. Full disclosure, I watch both of these guys' channels every so often. I'll watch videos from both of them. It's nice to get a different kind of perspective from a different kind of comic book consumer, and I've long said that there are different kinds of consumers. You could make archetypes for those consumers in comics, and I think that you should. But I think both of them are probably pretty firmly categorized in the collector's market. I know like Gem Mint Collectibles, he will collect omnibuses. That's like his big thing, but he collects other things as well. I've seen him do slabs or single issue comics. Comic Tom is definitely a collector type person. He also has a YouTube channel, of course, and he's doing giveaways and stuff like that. And he does sell some comics through his channel, through like memberships or something, which I actually think is a good idea. Good on you. So all of that off the table now. They did this video together where they talked about variant covers. I want to go through their 5 reasons that they gave for why variant covers are not hurting they specifically said are not killing the industry. I'm guarantee you this is in response from so many people saying that variant covers are killing the industry. In fact, you can even scroll down to the comment section, and a lot of people have said that they're not happy with variant covers. Now that doesn't mean that everyone's right. I like the old-fashioned way, one cover. Doesn't mean that you know, everyone's right about the industry necessarily, but let's get into it because maybe they are. All right, so here's their first point.
So the first thing is there's more of a choice. It's not all about money.
Exactly. So the first...
All right, so options. So I hadn't really thought about this, but I guess it makes sense. If you're going to buy an issue, there's going to be options. Now, I relate a lot of this because not only am I a comic creator, I am a publisher. You know, I publish these trade paperback versions of Downcast. I still have a lot to learn, and here I'm learning it. That is an interesting point, that if somebody is not interested in your book because it has one cover, but they're going to want to buy it because it has a different cover, there are options, and they're going to choose one where they might not if you only had one cover. I guess that's a good point. In isolation, I don't have a problem with that, but when I hear people say that they don't like variant covers because they don't want to have to buy all the variant covers, you don't have to buy that's the only argument that really bothers me. You don't have to buy all the covers. Just buy one cover, then just pick one that you like and buy it. I get though that it can be hard to choose, but you know, that's kind of silly. So first point is I think a pretty soft one, but yeah, you get more options. A lot of people don't care at all though if there's a variant cover choice, and that's not really a huge factor into purchasing a comic book. On the other hand, a lot of people say that covers are the only reason that they buy books. So if it's that big of a selling point for some people, then I guess an option, it could be a good thing. I will give them that. All right, here's their next one.
To draw you into a run that you might have never even read.
Let's chat about how variant covers create a vast amount of opportunity in the comic book market.
All right, so opportunity, he's talking about a few different things here. One being the secondary market opportunities. You know, people can get something that's a little bit more unique, and the collecting aspect of it creates opportunities that way. This is not something I really think about all that much, but I do understand, like, there's the ecosystem of comics, and you do have collectors that are out there that want to collect. Like, that's the fun of the hobby for them, is buying comics. It's almost like there's additional key issues, so to speak, I guess. There are other things to go after. Now, to make this claim, that variants are not killing the comic book industry, and then focus on secondary market opportunities, I think that is a little short-sighted. The main industry has to be healthy in order for the secondary market to also be healthy. I mean, I guess it could continue if all comic book publishing stopped. There would still be a secondary market where people are buying and selling, but we want it to be able to keep going. Like, that's the idea. I think it's healthier for everybody if the comic book industry is still continuing. And so I think the secondary market should really be a secondary concern. One other thing I got to point out is I'm not sure why the tone in this video is it feels like you're watching like apologetics for something, like for Marvel. Essentially, this is like a Marvel apologetics thing. I don't know what Marvel does, if they reach out to YouTubers, if they send these guys free comics or anything like that. I'm not, I don't want to speculate too much, but it does seem kind of odd that it's just complete support. It feels like a PR move for specifically Marvel. I think DC as well, but Marvel is the one that has the problem with flooding the shelves. I'm going to get into this a little bit later. All right, here is the next point.
And let's look at the third reason why variant comics are not hurting the comic book market.
Sorry, I gotta pause it right there. They're not, you see what I mean? Like the apologetics thing, they're really not. Like, don't freak out, everybody. I'm guessing that they've probably gotten a lot of backlash over variant covers, because I know specifically Comic Tom has talked a lot about variants. He gives out variants, and I think, maybe I've got this wrong, but I think he can do his own variants for his channel. Again, like I think that variant covers inherently, there's nothing wrong with it if you have a few variant covers. The problem is when you get into flooding the shelves and then predatory practices against small comic shops, those are the problems. If you have a couple variant covers for a book, that's not as big of a deal. But when there are so many, when your line of books is already so big that you're flooding the market, you're flooding everyone else out of the market because you have so many versions of the same book, you're going to sell more copies if you just have different kinds of titles that are really good that people want to get. Clear room on the shelves for those sorts of books that people actually want, as opposed to the same variants from the same Marvel comics that are always constantly flooding the shelf. This is Marvel's game plan right now. This is their strategy. They want to keep the competition out by covering all that retail space. They want all of it. All right, Tom, let's hear what you have to say.
Let's just get into what it really is about here. It creates lower print runs. It creates a stronger comic book collector market.
Comic book collectors, again, lower print runs. My point on the print run from a publishing perspective is a little bit different. It allows you to make a larger print run because you're more likely to sell more copies of that book. And because you can do a larger print run, you can actually buy those books per book cheaper per copy. For crowdfunding, this was a big deal. For me in particular, for my campaign, it was a big deal to be able to get 2,000 books published printed as opposed to 1,000. The price per book drops significantly when you pass that threshold. This isn't helping comic book shops out, though. This is definitely helping publishers out. I've got no problem with that. Totally makes sense. The secondary market, though, creating limited print runs, I guess maybe if you're a collector and you're into getting a book that's hot and that goes up in value, if you're worried about the value of the book rising afterward, or making some kind of return on investment, okay, that's fine. But from the health of the industry perspective, you have to understand the secondary market is not the industry. And that's why I feel like you're getting wrong here. You're talking about the secondary market, the health of secondary market, but the health of the industry itself, it's not the same thing. Having limited print runs helps the industry 0%. What they do, though, is they'll limit print runs on specific books and make shops order so many numbers of copies of the older, or the regular cover A version in order for them to get those more rare chase copies. And then they have them, but that's not helping retailers. That is enriching basically the publisher. So the publisher is getting a piece of that secondary market action because of those more rare versions of the comic book that they have artificially made rare. All right, here's the next one.
I think this is the next reason why variants are really assisting in growing the comic book market. It helps the store, and specifically it helps offset the risks of comic books that don't sell off the shelves. Now,
all right, well, point here, he says it helps the stores. It helps the stores in that if you're selling more books, even if they're variant covers from the same title, selling more books is good for comic shops. On the other hand, the variant covers also hurt comic shops, and I've heard many retailers say this before. Like I would listen to the retailers. They're telling you that it's a problem because if somebody goes to the store and they want this special variant, they can go to their local comic shop and they're not going to have it. Where are they going to be left to go? They're going to go to Midtown Comics online or something to get these versions. One other point he makes though is when it comes to variant covers is a store specific variant cover. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's a great idea. This is kind of like, I don't know what a lot of comic book artists do for their special version that they're selling at conventions. They'll do a cover for an existing title and then sell it, and it's a unique variant that only they have to give to the world. Comic shops can do that as well. I think that's totally cool. Like, I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. It's a business move that a particular shop decides to make. It's a risk that they decide to take on and shoulder, and they're going to try and sell that book themselves. On the downside, variant covers as a whole, they do flood the shelves, and that has been a big problem for comic shops because they're left trying to decide which titles are going to sell. And if they have to buy a million copies of the same book, like how many books they have to buy, it actually increases risks for them because they're trying to cover so many bases. They're already spread really thin because Marvel is flooding the shelves. Just with titles. When it comes to covers too, they really have to pick and choose. And so if Marvel cut their line a little bit or cut their variant covers at least a little bit, limited them to something, then they'd have a little bit more options to take risks in other places on other titles, which would help the indie market. And of course I care about the indie market, but you could also make room for more hot titles and focus on titles that are going to get people excited to go into a comic shop and buy books, no matter what publisher they're coming from. But of course, Marvel's only looking out for Marvel, so their best strategy is essentially to hold everyone else down.
This is a program that's intended to help comic shops. Now, you do have some stores that are intentionally over ordering just to try to get that 1 out of 100 book, which may not be the best practice because then they get stuck with a lot more inventory than they were supposed to have.
So this is a good point. I think far too often, and I've fallen into this trap myself, we have a tendency to like infantilize comic book shops. Like it's being done to them and they have no say in the matter. But it is a good point. If you're a business owner and you're trying to make smart business decisions, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go buy tons of copies of a certain comic book just so you can get this rare one. Are you a retailer or are you a collector with the guise of a retailer? That's a completely different issue. So I think that actually makes sense. Like that's a good argument when you're discussing predatory practices of publishers versus comic book shops. So yeah, I mean, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. Like you don't buy them all. You do have some options there. Having said that, it does give it an unfair advantage. Again, like you think of those really huge comic shops, Midtown Comics, and they're selling stuff online. You could go to your local comic shop, or you could just go to Midtown and they're going to have, I don't know how all the details work. I don't really shop there often, but when I've been looking for comics, I've noticed that they do sell variant covers. They're the ones that have them, and other places like my local comic shop don't. So it is tricky, but yeah, Gem Mint point there. I think that's a great point. We're not talking about children here. These are grown adults that are running businesses. It would also be helpful though if publishers supported these smaller shops in ways. The truth is Marvel is just interested in selling volume. That's what it's about. All right, here's their fifth and final point.
And then the next point on this list, straight up innovation. That is why I love variant covers.
Variant covers came out with the idea of having a blank sketch that you could take to a con, have your favorite artist sign it or do a sketch on it, and you can even get it graded by CGC.
All right, so there have been innovations in variant covers. That's cool. I don't see a problem with that. I don't think most people have a problem with that. The problem is when it's being overused and it does hurt the industry. How does it hurt the industry? To summarize, it floods the shelves even more. That's been the biggest problem. Marvel's not doing this tactic of flooding the shelves so that they can make money. What they're doing is they're trying to crowd the market. That is not healthy for an industry. That is healthy if you're trying to create a monopoly. So we're talking about two different strategies here. If they raise their prices, I mean, they could do that. More people are going to be buying competitors' books. What they can do, though, is flood the shelves so much and push competitors out of shops that they essentially, like eventually the prices are going to go up even higher if they don't have competition when it comes to prices, especially in retail shops that you can, you're going to on a regular basis, presumably. One point I am going to give that they didn't say from a publishing perspective is that as far as mitigating risk goes and ensuring that you are going to make, or not ensuring, but you're going to make the risk better by doing a variant cover. On my campaign, I have one variant cover. You'll see I've got cover A by Kelsey Shannon, cover B by Matt Weldon. To me, 2 variant covers is pretty good. I think 3 is the max that I would do personally, but we're also talking about a crowdfunding campaign. This is not going up on comic shelves anywhere, taking up shelf space, though I wish it would. It will through Alternate in a different format. But a variant cover for a crowdfunding campaign, for my own, in my own experience, having the one variant cover was honestly the difference between me making any profit at all versus me just making the book as some kind of nonprofit venture. I can only speak for myself, but that has absolutely been the case. If you wanted to lower the price of comics, especially crowdfunded books, there's one way I know I could do it. I could probably go back down to a $15 book, like a bigger $15 book, but that would require something like 4 or 5 variant covers in hopes that more people, the average backer number is going to go up. So, it's tough. It feels like this weird negotiation you're trying to make between variant covers and, reason and also profit. It's extremely expensive to make a comic book. I think that there are better ways to do variant covers and there are worse ways to do variant covers. Specifically, I'm calling out Marvel. I think they're doing the worst kind of stuff with variant covers. At the same time, there are people that really like variant covers. They like buying variant covers, and it does help a book make more money, and it does minimize risk, and it allows you potentially to lower the price and still make a profit. I don't know what all the magic numbers are on all of this, but I do think it's an interesting discussion to have. So let me know what you think in the comments below about all of this. Are there any points that either I missed or Comic Tom and Gem Mint missed? And don't forget to check out Downcast Rise and Fall. We've got 1 week left, and it is the link in the description below. I will see you next time.